Good evening. This is John Bailey, and this is People to Be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And tonight, you've got the Assemblyman from the 93rd District representing White Plains and Environs North, David Buchwald. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me back, John.
Yes, sir. And you are here because this is a big week. You and George Latimer, the county executive, chaired a big meeting on your findings last Monday. We're taping on Friday the 25th. And tell us about that meeting. You put out a 48-page document.
That's
and
right.
Let the utilities have it.
So no resident of Westchester has forgotten the storms that we experienced back in March.
Yeah.
That knocked out power for over 150,000 utility customers. That probably means over 300,000 Westchester residents. And the power outages were for extended period of time in many cases. And we formed a group that we call United Westchester. Basically every elected official from mayors and supervisors on up, so county elected officials, state and federal, along with representatives from every locality, have come together. We held a meeting in late March at the county center, over 70 of us, and then we decided we would bring together all of our different perspectives into a report that we could share with the Public Service Commission, the state agency that oversees utilities, and the utilities themselves, to basically put on paper what our experience was in a whole range of different areas, and that report we released this week.
Put it on the records, so to speak.
Well, there's so much of what happens in storm response is, and the aftermath is just done by anecdote. People know their own individual circumstances, or a particular municipality will know what happened there. But fundamentally, what matters is comprehensively taking a look at things. And we broke this report down into 21 different topic areas, many of them dealing with utilities, but not all of them. Sometimes it's the communication between governments, the communications with telecommunications companies, or the lack thereof.
Yes.
But people who read the report, and you can come to my state assembly website. It's right there on the front page. Click and read it yourself. But it'll be also up on the Public Service Commission website and otherwise. You will see that in this report, we include everything. That when over 30 elected officials provided their perspectives that entered into this report on different topics. Sometimes officials will disagree as to their perspective on whether something was done well or not. Usually there's effectively a majority view that we highlight, but no one's perspective on any particular issue was excluded. We wanted to basically lay out the range of things, and different people highlight different areas that they think particularly need to be worked on. But the point being, like, if someone had a compliment for a utility company or otherwise, that's there. If someone had a very specific story to tell that informs the broader perspective, that's there too. And we think this is a very valuable contribution to the discussion.
Is this the first time this has been done? Sort of an amalgamation of all the input? Well, first of all, down the Public Service Commission's lap?
This is, to my knowledge, the first time there's ever been this broad Westchester organization of elected officials from all levels of government, bipartisan. Potentially in the county's history, to bring folks together. And the fact that this affected everyone in the county, that all of us as elected officials tried during the storms to work together. The normal barriers between levels of government came down. It's an emergency. You have to work together. We sort of expect that from our utility companies as well. And this is just the continuation of that effort. And a report like this is unique to my knowledge, but also this isn't the end of our work. This is just the end of the beginning of our work.
Speaking of the beginning, where do you expect all these recommendations to go? Who's going to whip the utilities into line?
Sure. Well, first of all, in addition to making the report public, we submitted it to the Public Service Commission that is conducting an investigation. They actually held hearings including around 4 sites in Westchester, but also all around the state because they're investigating 7 different utility companies. We here in Westchester are most focused on ConEd, which serves about 3/4 of the county, and NYSEG, which serves the northern portion of the county. My assembly district goes from ConEd to NYSEG territory. But the storm affected the entire region, and the Public Service Commission is looking at utility companies both that performed poorly and those that performed well, because you want to understand what are the good practices.
That should be a short job.
Well, at least for that particular storm, some utility companies did have a better restoration record, but in any case,
less outages too.
There's the utility companies have now all under the Public Service Commission had to submit both 30-day and 60-day reports. So the Public Service Commission now has all this information, including public testimony, and they will proceed with their process. But we're not just going to leave it in their lap, although they're a very important player in this. The State Assembly itself, we're actually about this upcoming Tuesday, the 29th, day after Memorial Day, we're going to be having a hearing here in Westchester. The Assembly's committees on both what are called Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions, which is the committee that I serve on, that Amy Paulin chairs, that oversees the Public Service Commission, and also the Committee on Energy are going to have a joint hearing. It'll be at the County Board of Legislators chambers, so right here in White Plains. Start in the morning, I believe it's 10 a.m., but anyone can go to the Assembly website and just double check the information. And we will have there the heads of both ConEd and NYSEG, representatives from the Public Service Commission, and also elected officials. I believe actually George Ladden will be testifying. And that's a further opportunity to get answers to questions, and especially since this report has some of those questions in it.
Why don't you hold it up and
so
show it.
So here's the report. We got a cover page from County Executive George Ladden and I, but you should know this is a compilation of work that, first of all, feedback from, as I said, over 30 elected officials, and we have a 10-member executive committee with representatives from local governments, county government, state government, as part of the executive committee, but also like our Councilor Nita Lowy was involved. We asked everyone by early April to turn in their feedback forms. Then we had to took about a month to compile, and now it is part of the record. And I'd like to think that you also asked, well, who does this go to? This also goes to the utility companies. In the first instance, we're going to see to what extent voluntarily do they want to adopt some of our recommendations, and not that necessarily
what do you mean
we know everything.
To what extent they want? Isn't
Well,
there a way we can make them do something?
There are, and that's part of what the Public Service Commission or those of us who are legislators can be involved in. But certainly to implement changes quickly, and that's sometimes very important because we don't know when the next storm is coming. In fact, just last week and the week before, we had major storms,
another outage problem,
especially affecting northern Westchester, Putnam, and Dutchess counties. And there's literally a point where
45, 50
if you lived in NYSEG territory in my assembly district, I know your power went out because literally every single person lost power in those towns. And
we get very little reportage from the NYSEG people. They don't have a website like ConEd does that gives you some sort of handle.
They have some information. It's not presented in quite the same way. We go into the topics of communications with the public, and certainly the websites are crucial. But also we know the robocalls were essentially a negative aspect of their interactions.
Like the garbage notices we get in White Plains.
Well, part of it was, it's not that someone got a robocall, which in of itself at times is annoying. Here, it's people would be happy to get accurate information from their utility companies. But the fact that too often it was a call that said, your power has been restored, when in fact your power had not been restored. People want actionable information. If you're told your power's not going to come on for 3 or 4 days, you might not like the fact that your power is going to be out for that long, but you can at least make plans. You can stay in a hotel, go visit friends, so forth. We have stories of folks returning from 2 hours away because they thought their power was back on to come to a house that's dark and cold.
Yes.
That sort of thing
is
is
quite a bit.
absolutely. And we relay a lot of what we observed as elected officials, and not that elected officials know everything, but we are the representatives of the people of Westchester.
Well, you get all the calls.
And that's
right.
part of it. Is
Yes.
we are the so one of the places people go first. And obviously they try to call you a utility company, and we encourage them to, but fundamentally, that's the role we play. Like, you might say, what does a state assembly member specifically have to do in terms of a formal role? I'm not during the storm voting up in Albany, but the role my office plays is when we hear from someone during a storm, we're trying to get them accurate information. We're trying to relay information to the local governments and the utility companies. And if you go now to my Twitter or Facebook feeds, and you go back to the days of those March storms, you'll see everyone who wrote into me got a reply, either directly there publicly or picking up the phone or sending them a direct message and so forth. And that sort of thing, like, it's our job to make sure that people are as safe as possible.
It assures if a representative is responsive to a person's personal concerns, they love that.
Well,
They absolutely love that. They want that. They need it. And when they don't, they feel powerless. There's nowhere they can turn.
one of the things, people ask me, I was just actually up in Albany this week with a bunch of middle school students, and they asked me, well, what does a state assemblyman do? And I told them, of course, because they were up in Albany, about the Albany portion of the job. But the vast majority of my job is here in Westchester County. It's serving constituents, going to meetings and community events, but also handling individual constituent needs. And sometimes those are more routine things that someone can take the time to email me or call my office about. But when you're in an emergency, yes, as an elected official, it can be sort of like you're on call 24/7. But on the flip side, when you're able to get someone's power restored or help get them the information they need to plan, you feel you're really making a difference. And so there's no doubt, and I think my small able staff feels this is part of the reason we're there.
Right. Well, that's exactly when you lose that mindset as a member of the legislative body, you're lost.
Well,
You're lost.
I have the
because-
philosophy,
yeah.
I think I've told you this, John,
Yeah.
since I have 130,000 residents of my district, that means I have 130,000 bosses. And people, when I say that, sometimes they say, oh, no, you don't really mean that. Actually, we sort of mean it. Like, of course, my bosses don't always agree. But if your boss in your job called and asked you to do something, if there's any way for you to do it, you would try to do it.
Try to do it. Try and get it done.
Thankfully, my bosses are overall a pretty understanding group. They understand, first of all, that they don't always agree, and therefore can't always accomplish things. But also, they understand that I have lots of other bosses, and therefore not every problem can be solved immediately. But especially when it comes to an emergency power outage, you've got to work as quickly as possible.
Right. Now, coming up on Monday, June the 4th at 2 o'clock, ConEd will once again be in on the carpet in front of the Board of Legislators in Westchester to talk, to answer questions still left unanswered from their March appearance at the board, which was woefully inadequate, in my opinion. They weren't prepared. They didn't care. Yeah, that's the impression I got from that. What do you think will be different this time?
Well, for one thing, the utility companies now are at the point where they have made their filings with the Public Service Commission, so they'll no longer be able to say, we'll have to wait for that filing to come out, which I think, was the first resort that sometimes was being used, and sometimes legitimately, sometimes more as an excuse. Now we're at the point where everyone's initial cards are on the table. There's no utility company executive who's going to be able to say, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. If it was a problem, it's in this report. And therefore, it's all the more an expectation that there be responses. And not that every response is going to be one that we or the public wants to hear or agrees with, but we certainly expect substantive responses.
Now, the Public Service Commission can just whitewash this whole problem as just an ongoing part of the business that we don't have all the facilities. And this cannot happen because we've shown that this calling in utility crews from who knows where to repair stuff takes a long time to come in. It doesn't work. It hasn't worked in the 15 years I've been doing this type of reporting. And when will this stop? When will they make ConEd always have staff on hand to handle the massive outages?
Well, that's one of the reasons that the Assembly committee hearing that I'll be at on Tuesday the 29th, one of the reasons we're going to have the Public Service Commission in, because you're right, we have important questions for them and their work. Even though they're in the middle of their investigation, last year, 2017, was the first time that the Public Service Commission used some new rules to put forward a multi-million-dollar fine against a utility company. It actually happens to be one of the sister companies of NYSEG up in Rochester. And it's important for members of the public to know that when the Public Service Commission implements these fines, they aren't a fine that's paid for by ratepayers. It's a fine that's essentially paid for by shareholders because it comes out of the profit that the utility company is allowed to put forward. So that's one of the options that's on the table for the Public Service Commission, but definitely understanding their timeline is going to be a crucial thing because, again, they now have all the information that they need. Yes, they need some time to process it, but just like the Westchester elected officials, we put out in this report 11 what we call early recommendations. Because we understand that we haven't been able, even as a group of 70 elected officials, to have all the conversations we need about, now that we've all had a chance to read the report, coming forward with every single possible idea that we have. We thought there were 11 things that were common sense points that we didn't necessarily need outside information in order to make. So the point is, the Public Service Commission...
Communications particularly.
Well, that's one of the biggest areas here, without a doubt. Both communications with the public, communications with government officials. I mean, part of it is government officials should be a natural ally of utility companies during a storm. We have the ability to contact members of the public, give them information. But what happened in this storm instead is I literally had town supervisors saying, do not trust what's on the utility company's website because it was inaccurate. And when you have that sort of breakdown of trust, where public officials are saying you cannot rely on the utility company for information, you know things are wrong, but it's not just a communications problem. I want to stress that because I think some utility company executives have tried to frame it as just about communications.
No, it's not.
It was about operational issues. And I think it's important to recognize that, yes, we had 21 categories. Many of them relate to communications, but by no means the majority. And it'll be essential for utility companies to look through this, try to identify their own things. They've already put out forward some ideas, but I don't think that they're yet at the point where they really can give the public confidence that these extended outages won't happen again.
Well, will there be an effort to find out and quantify from ConEd how much of a standing, ready to go at a moment's notice workforce they would need to have on staff to hit the downed wires running instead of calling up the good old boys from away from this area that take 2 to 3 days to get here and extend the delays by, I'd say, at least 50%.
Well, I think, John, you're certainly right to point out mutual aid, as it's being conceived and constructed, is not sufficiently providing the manpower we need.
Exactly.
This is, it's a system that's been strengthened and reformed since Superstorm Sandy, but fundamentally, it's not providing all that we need. All that having been said, when utility companies come down from Maine or Quebec or up from Texas, the
thank God
folks,
they can.
the
Thank
folks
God
who do come are capable folks. We did not hear a single complaint about specific line crew or tree crew or make safe crew members, and that's very important, is that the folks who are on the ground
I'm not
do their job.
criticizing the companies come in. I want everybody to understand that. I'm criticizing the fact that for 15 years now, we have let ConEd and all the utilities get away with this shared services idea that when something goes wrong for you, we'll come and help you. But this screws the consumer. It makes the shareholders' returns quite nice because they don't have to afford for standing workforce. But this is the question. Who is going to finally, up in Albany, say, listen, we can't handle this anymore. We need a standing force or something that the state can throw in, like National Guard or something.
One of the things that I've been struck by in recent weeks is the fact that when we compare what happens during emergencies to also what happens during non-emergency times, it's not as if my office didn't receive complaints about utility companies only after the March storms. If you're a White Plains or Westchester resident and you have 2 utility poles right on your property, and they're not supposed to be double poles there, and there's a process in place supposedly for remedying that, you haven't been able, in many cases, to get the utility companies, and it's not, in that case, it's not just electrical utilities, to move the wires and replace the poles and take down the old poles. If you're a business that's trying to open up and rejigger things and you need ConEd or NYSEG to get routine work done, it's often a multi-week wait. At least that's what I'm being told by electrical contractors. And so it seems to me that if you have a combination of both routine work and emergency work not going quickly enough, then you almost certainly are in a position to say, either because of a standing group or call in mutual aid quicker. And that's part of it, is once the storm hits, it is hard for mutual aid to get here because of the impacts of the storm. And if you call them in, and if it turns out it's not as bad as you thought, have them do some of your routine work that isn't getting done.
That's true. So you're saying they're understaffed. You're just saying
one way or another, and that doesn't mean that I can definitely sit here and say, here's exactly the way to solve it. But I do think we have identified that problem, and someone needs to provide an explanation for how that's going to be solved.
Well, who is going to bell the cats here up in upstate?
So
will the governor take a strong hand and work out legislation that will mandate some sort of arrangement where the state will subsidize a workforce that is electrically trained to restore and be ready to go for a moment's notice for anywhere in the state? I mean, that's off the top of my head is what you need.
No, and
what do you think? Will he go that way?
I certainly believe the governor is committed to seeing changes.
He is committed.
Well, he was very forceful at the time in the immediate aftermath of these storms, and he's a constituent of mine. He in general seems to be a fellow who's a man of his word. That having been said, the exact form of what the solutions are going to be, that's something that we're only in the middle of now trying to work through. And I would welcome feedback from utility companies, feedback from other electric contractors who have perspective on these things. But there are a bunch of ideas that have been put forward in the report, separate from our recommendations. If an individual town supervisor had an idea, it's laid out here. So it's now something that the Public Service Commission and the utility companies can react to, or that we can more broadly as United Westchester discuss.
Do you expect the Public Service Commission will let it go at a monster fine again? Or are they actually going to perhaps examine this whole business of mutual aid?
I think it's got to be both a combination of substantive changes and monetarily making sure that utility companies are incentivized to do the right thing in the first place.
But this will also, if the companies have to pay for it, the utilities have to pay for an increase in staff or contribute to a statewide strike force to reestablish electricity. They could either raise rates to do that, or they could make the state provide aid to do that. I mean, there's a lot to be considered here, but it can be done, and it has to be done, because we can't have I mean, businesses don't want to come in to Westchester County and establish a headquarters. Do you think Amazon is going to come in if they're going to go down for a week?
So John, maybe this will be my last point, because I know we're running out of time. You might recall that after Superstorm Sandy, Governor Cuomo impaneled a Moreland Commission on Utility Storm Preparedness. And that Moreland Commission actually did complete its work, issue reports, and so forth. And one of the things it found was the cost of preparation and resiliency is less than the cost of damage after storms. So if you can put together something that actually is reliable, that prevents this damage from occurring in the first place, then the cost is actually less if you pay it up front than later.
Burying the lines just off the top of my head.
It's one of the potential options, although that's also a very costly perspective. But the point is, having teams in place, or even at the utility companies, having folks dedicated to only focusing on what happens in a mass power outage situation, you know, something like that could be a very useful process. But we'll see.
Do you think this will be executed before the election of all?
It could be. The 2017 Rochester proceeding took about a year. Here, there's, I think, even more urgency because of the broader impact. But we will learn within the next week or two a little bit more about what the Public Service Commission timeframe is.
Yes, and we presume that right now it is really up to the governor to decide what they are actually, the state is actually going to do.
The Public Service Commission, although the governor makes appointments, is formally an independent agency, but obviously all of us in state government, governors and legislators,
you may or may not.
Well, I assume that something will happen. It's just a question of what exactly the form of that will be.
Yes, right. David Buchwald, Assemblyman from the 93rd District, talking about the power crisis. And thank you for being with us.
Thank you, John.
David. Good night for People to be Heard.